Dyson Sphere Program was released on the 21st of January into early access by YouthCat Studios and prompted a shift away from the normal satisfactory videos I tend to make. Without giving too much away, Dyson Sphere Program is a factory building game in a similar ilk to the likes of Satisfactory and Factorio, to name a few. Where this differs though is, rather than simply industrializing a single planet, Dyson Sphere Program is a game where you endlessly industrialize an entire galaxy cluster, and with the end goal of building a Dyson sphere around a star to harvest its energy. This won't be a complete review of the game since I'm only about a dozen hours into the game, but it will rather be my first impressions of it. At first, it has a very familiar introduction and build process, especially to those who are already familiar with the factory game genre, and the in-game advisor pops up at a not frustratingly common interval. I think this is something that YouthCat Studios has managed to nicely balance, especially as the advisor is supported by more in-depth guides that you can access at any point in the game once you've reached that point. The game itself is a third-person view game, but the way that they've done the art style with the planets curving away into the distance is stunningly executed, backed up by a very relaxing soundtrack, which means you'll be running around and building production lines while being completely chilled out for hours and hours. In the research. Oh yeah, the research. There's so much research. It seems intimidating at first, but I found that it made sense the further I got into it. I also found that I could research passively while I was building my production lines, and I'll be making a video about that soon, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. So it was more a case of just picking the order that you want to discover things in, and just carry on building what you need to build. While there's no combat in the game as yet, it is something that the developers have said that they'll be adding in the future though. It's not something that I really miss. In fact, I quite like the sort of relaxing, work at your own pace type of playstyle that the game currently has. You don't feel rushed to build to a certain point so that you know you have achieved a certain level of safety. For an early access game, though, I am incredibly impressed with the lack of bugs in the game. I certainly haven't noticed any in my time in the game so far. And that's high praise considering the number of bugs that are even in AAA titles at release. And bear in mind, this game is developed by only 5 incredibly talented developers, versus the hundreds that work on AAA games. But the lack of bugs withstanding, there is other aspects of the game and so on that I've not been so impressed with, but what I really have been impressed with is the speed of the bug fixes so far. It's almost like something's reported and it's fixed within hours. So far so good then, but you'd think that this is the perfect game going by what I've said, and there are a few niggles with it from what I've found. The key bindings aren't what I would choose to use, but it's already been announced that the developers will be including the ability to change key bindings in a future update, so it's just a case of waiting until that comes out. Another point I'm a bit confused on is your mecha Icarus. It needs fuel to operate. Otherwise it'll move very slowly and severely limit you with what you can do until you get more fuel or in range of the power poles that can recharge you. It just seems like a bit of a pointless mechanic that confuses the gameplay a bit for me. But that isn't to say that it'll make more sense once more content's added to the game in future. Another aspect of the game that kind of niggles me is how power limited you are. I frequently found I was getting interrupted more by hitting the power limit than by anything else. It was literally just build a line, go build more power, build another production line, go build more power. So my advice would be to build as much power as you can as early on as possible to minimize this. Another point is that the mathematics of the game are pretty confusing. Some of it's done by so many items a minute, some of it's by so many a second, other bits are just numbers, it's like 1x or 0.75x, for example. I don't know if this is going to make more sense as I get further into the game, or whether it's something that the developers are going to address later on in a balancing update to maybe make things a bit more smoother. But it's really just something that's there for people that want to make as efficient a factory as possible. But in reality, if that's all I can complain about, then it just shows how good a job these 5 developers have done in getting the game to a really playable point prior to releasing it into the wild, even in early access. And it really makes me excited for what's to come in the future. So to answer the question, is Dyson Sphere Program worth it? I mean, I think I can see myself getting easily about 100 hours or more out of this. And there's a great replayability factor to it, since each galaxy cluster is procedurally generated. So you'll be faced with different challenges for each game you create. But is that worth it to me? I have to say yes. I can see this game giving me hours of enjoyment, and definitely a game to keep an eye on with what's coming in the future. And with all that said, I think that's the end of the video. If you feel it's worth it, put comment down below. If you like the video, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And with that said, I will see you in the next one.